Okay, in retirement homes and community homes, because there aren't a lot of charts in place, in retirement homes there may be a little bit of information. In community homes we really don't have very much to go by in terms of the resident's health history. So we do have a health history form. For the residents to fill out themselves, and if they need help they can ask their family member. In a retirement home sometimes the nursing staff will help them fill it out. We also have the form available in French in your binder, so for some of the northern locations or some of the eastern Ontario locations where there is a big French population, you can offer it to them in French as well. And basically, I won't go through all of the questions. There's name, date of birth, health card, and version code number. I would ask that the PTA, when the resident has filled out the form and they submit the form, the PTA just needs to go through it with the resident, or perhaps not with the resident, just to double check that it is all completely filled out. There is a back side to it as well, and this is what the back side looks like. And I would ask the PTA, in retirement homes and community homes, usually the resident keeps their own health card. So it would be just to double check that the health card number that they've written here is correct, and that if there's a version code, which are the 2 letters on the photo health cards, or the 1 letter at the bottom right hand corner of the red and white cards, sometimes on the red and white cards there will be a letter at the bottom, that's considered a version code for the red and white health cards. So just to double check that we have the correct health card number and version code, and to just go through the questions and make sure that the resident has filled out the form completely. That way, once we have the filled out health history form and we have the signed referral, then this can be given to the physio, and when the physio goes to see the resident for their initial assessment, the physio doesn't need to do a complete health history with the resident, because sometimes that can take a lot of time. As you all know, our residents sometimes don't have enough visitors, so as soon as they get somebody that comes in and wants to talk to them about their health history, oh my goodness, sometimes it lasts forever. So having this filled out ahead of time, the physiotherapist can go in and say, "Hi Mrs. Jones, my name is Amanda, I'm a physiotherapist. I'm coming to see you today to see how you're doing with your flexibility in your arms and legs and your strength and your balance, and I'm going to listen to your breathing and make sure it's okay and make sure you're walking okay. And I have had a chance to review your health history, and I would just like to take a moment now, if that's okay with you. We'll just go through the assessment to see how physiotherapy can help you. If, as a physiotherapist, you've looked through the form and you have some questions specifically about something on it, when you say, I have reviewed your health history form, you can say, I was just wondering regarding your hip replacement, when did you have that? What year was it? If they didn't write it down. So you can ask for specific information if there's something missing. If, according to you, you don't feel there's anything missing and you don't need any additional information, you can just see, I have reviewed your health history form. Thank you for taking the time to fill it out, and go from there. So it can save you a lot of time to have that filled out ahead of time. Okay, now we're going to be discussing the physiotherapy 2-month program log, and this is what it looks like. And basically, this is one of the most important pieces of documentation for PTAs in all home settings, nursing homes, retirement homes, and community homes. This is where we're saving you lots and lots of documentation time by indicating the treatments that the resident are receiving underneath the program list here. You have 13 spots, and at the top you'd be writing the resident's name and their date of birth, because we do need the 2 identifying pieces of information for the resident. Here you see month, so you'll be able to enter the month and the year there, and on the bottom half of the sheet, because basically the top half up to here is for 1 month and the bottom half of the sheet is for the 2nd month. So you're able to record 2 months of treatment data on the one sheet for the one resident. Examples of what would be entered under the program title here would be walking program, and then in brackets gait training, or walking program and in brackets fitness benefits. After gait training or fitness benefits, you would also put in brackets number of feet, like the number sign, feet, or number meters, because when you indicate that the resident has walked, if they walked on the 1st of the month, you wouldn't only put a check mark, you're actually going to indicate the actual distance that they walked. So if you're measuring it in feet, you would write walk program, gait train, and then in brackets number, the number sign, feet. So all of the numbers that are indicated here are actual numbers of feet that the resident walked. If we have just a check mark, the reason we don't do that is when anybody is looking at this program log, all they see is the resident walked, but they can't see any progression, improvement, or decline in how far the resident can walk. In Coligo, our stats program, we document how long we do the walking for in terms of minutes. On the program log, we enter how far they walk. And for myself, let's say, for example, we walk a resident for 5 minutes. We enter 5 minutes in Coligo. On the program log, we're going to be entering how far they walk. So here's where it's important to realize why we're asking you to enter the distance. If in that 5 minutes the resident walked 5 feet on the 1st of the month, and after 5 minutes of walking on the last day of the month, they're now walking 100 feet, you can really see the progression from 5 to 15 and all the way up to 100. It lets you know how they're doing in terms of improvement. If we would only put a check mark, we'd have no idea how they're improving. If we would be recording how many minutes they're walking for, we would just be putting 5 because that's how long we walk them for, right? So important to indicate if you're measuring the distance in feet or meters, and then to indicate that there. What I have suggested in homes is to take, the label makers, and most homes are in agreement with this. So you would make a series of labels, 0FT for feet or 0M for meters, and then 20 FT or 20 M, 40, 60, 80, 100 for however many feet or meters you need it. And then just to stick those labels either at the very top of the door jambs at 20, 40, 60, and 80 feet or meters, or some homes preferred putting them at the handle of the doorknobs. Some preferred putting them just on top of the baseboards at the bottom. But it's a fast way for you to be able to eyeball and see how far the resident's walking instead of having to count tiles or count steps like I was doing for a long time. You don't always have to start at 0 feet either. If you start a resident at the 20 feet label and they walk to 60 feet, you know you've walked them for 40. So it can be used in any sort of way. It just makes it easier to have an objective measure of how far the resident is walking. So that would be an example of what you would do for walking. Let's say the resident didn't want to walk that day. All of the codes for refusal are at the bottom of the program log. So for example, if you were advised not to ask the resident by the nursing staff, you would write ANA in that little square there. Instead of writing how far they walked, you would write ANA if somebody asked you not to walk them. There's also conflict in schedule, CS. If, for example, the doctor was in seeing the resident and you couldn't get back to see them, or they had another appointment with somebody else. If they're deceased, you would put a D. You would only put that once, obviously. Did not ask, DNA. That might be, maybe you go into the room and there are family members there and the resident's crying and it's very emotional. You may decide yourself not to ask them to participate in treatment, or maybe you didn't have time to get to them that day and you're supposed to see them every day, but you didn't have time for whatever reason. Maybe it's a short day for you, or it's a holiday or something. You would write DNA. G for done in group. So in some cases the physiotherapist may indicate on the treatment plan standing exercise class, and that's the only thing the resident has. Then they might also indicate under standing balance exercises, standing hip flexion right left sides times 10 reps, standing hip abduction times 10, standing mini squats, hold balance 1 foot 2 times 15 seconds right left sides, for example. And then I would write only to be done one-on-one if not already done in group. So you would have to put, for example, standing group exercises as one of the treatment programs. And then you would also put the individual ones that the physio asked you to do if they're not done in group. Standing hip flex right left times 10 reps. Standing hip ABD, right left times 10 reps. Standing mini squats times 10 reps. Standing tiptoe right left times 10 reps. Hold balance 1 foot right left 2 times 15 seconds, for example. I think those are the ones I mentioned. You would write that down very specifically so we know if it's a number of reps that we're doing or a number of minutes. If it's right side, left side, both sides, if it's in standing, if it's in sitting, you put it very specifically. Now, if the resident went to their group that day, their standing group, you would write, standing group exercises, and then in brackets, number min for minutes, and you would write 30 to indicate that they went for 30 minutes. But now you don't have to see them one-on-one for those standing balance exercises because they did them in your standing group. So you would write G and put a line through the rest of them and an arrow to the bottom one of the ones that they did in group so you don't have to see them one-on-one for. There's hospitalized, you would put H. If they're in isolation and you can't see them for that reason, you would write I. If they're not available, NA. So that could be perhaps they're busy in bingo or they're doing some other activity or something like that. Not found, NF. That can happen sometimes that you're searching for a resident, you just can't find them anywhere and you can't find anyone to tell you where they are, or the nursing staff you find don't know where they are. That does happen. NH for no help would be, for example, if you've got sit to stand times 10 reps, assist times 2, or walking program, gait train, A times 2 for assist times 2, number of feet, but you don't have that second person to help you do the walking, you would enter NH for no help. NT for not today. If the resident says, you know what, I don't want to do it today, then you would just write NT, and that's like refusing, right? If the resident's out visiting a family member, out for an appointment, you would write O. If the provider is absent, so perhaps, what could this be an example of? If the resident is seen by 2 different PTAs, maybe one PTA does the group and the other PTA does the individual treatment, then if the individual treatment's not done because that PTA was absent and the PTA that only does group for them didn't do the individual treatment, you would write PA for provider absent. PR, pain related. If you come to see a resident to do their treatment and the reason they're not doing the treatment is because they have pain related to the reason of the treatment, so let's say somebody doesn't want to walk because their back is sore or their legs are sore, you would write PR. If they don't want to walk because they have too much nausea or pain related to their chemo treatments or something that's not orthopedic, then you would write PU, not PU, but PU for pain unrelated. And that's a judgment call. PV, if they're on palliative care, so you can't see them because they're deemed palliative right now. S for sick, and please be careful that your S doesn't look like a 5. Sometimes I see 5s and S's and they look very much alike, so it's hard to tell. Too aggressive, TA. Perhaps that resident is too aggressive today with their behavior and you can't do the exercises with them. Too confused. There are certain treatments that it's hard to do if the resident doesn't understand. So some of the balance training that we do in standing or sitting, if they have a very bad day for their cognition and they're really just too confused that day, you may have to enter TC as the reason that you didn't do it.